All right, guys, welcome back to Within Tolerance. Today is episode 7, and I'm very excited for this episode because looking back on episode 6, we got, I think, 120 some views in like 4 or 5 days, which is I would say, the record for the most viewed podcast in the shortest period of time. So it definitely is showing that you guys are either watching through all of them or we're getting a lot of new listeners on this past episode. But overall, I'm really excited. And then also, thank you. I've been seeing a couple of the Apple reviews on iTunes. That's awesome. If you guys haven't done that already, definitely go over there, give us a 5-star rating, write a little review. That will help us out a lot. And then, like I've been preaching a lot, go ahead and post on Instagram stories, tag us with Intolerance Podcast, and we'll go ahead and repost that and just spread the word. And so far, I'm really happy with the results, and we're getting some cool questions by some very respected individuals on Instagram. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it's great. Welcome to all the new listeners. It seems like, enough people have started talking about it that it's reaching more people, which is great. The more people that listen and send us questions and stuff, the more fun this is for everybody.
Yeah, and we're working on, there's a couple people we have in mind that we'd like to have on. This is episode 7, so maybe by the time we hit double digits, we could have another special guest join for an episode, something like that. Our original goal was to get kind of established first and then start having guests on, and I think we're just about reaching that point, so I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, same. We wanted to get a flow down, just you and I, before, we added somebody else to the mix.
Yeah, so I think we're getting the hang of things. Everything's pretty flawless right now, so I'm pretty stoked. But other than that, podcast news, how has job shop life been with Dylan?
Good. We just kind of finished up everything that was really hot on our plate. We've still got a few jobs that we need to knock out in the next week or so, but we worked all weekend, and I was at the shop till 1 a.m. last night, just knocking out a bunch of jobs. We had that big stainless part that hopefully the customer will get together and give us the go ahead to kind of share more about it in the future here. But I was like blown away by how great the tooling from Helical worked on it. I was running some speeds and feats that I definitely didn't expect in 304. Especially on a 30 taper machine, and it just knocked it out of the park. I mean, it definitely took some tweaking to match both our work holding and our machine specifically, and all of that stuff. But I was still very impressed by the quality of the tool pad, or like the quality that the tools left, the great surface finish, speeds and feeds, all that stuff. So it was really nice, and that finished up Sunday, it's been a big weight on my shoulders, this because we don't cut 304 pretty much ever, and then to take on a project of this size and only have one piece of material and kind of a crunch deadline, it was just a lot of stress. And so to get it done and be really pleased with it, it was fantastic. And then
That's awesome.
yeah, and then last night we make these grills for a customer that we use the tape and glue method that Saunders kind of made popular.
Okay.
And the first time we ran them, I had lost one part. It like pulled up off and like spun around the collet chuck, which was frightening. But that was because it had kind of warped at one corner, and I even saw it before I ran it. I was like, oh, it should be fine, and it wasn't. So I made it through that entire run, and then Saturday or Sunday we set those up again because we had another order of them, and the first two blew off the fixture same exact way, and I was like, I don't know what in the hell I'm doing. They worked totally fine, and like I was scratching my head, and my customer's in a real bind on them because they're automotive grills, and like a lot of his customers are going to SEMA in a month or two. So they need to get them so that they can get all their builds finalized and all that stuff. So it was a time crunch for me. It was an inconvenience for him, and thankfully he's understanding. And so I spent a lot of time last night. I realized what I think I was doing is that I was putting too much glue on and not pressing down hard enough so it wasn't spreading out. And that was leading to pockets of it that, even though I was using the accelerator, it wasn't actually curing the entire glue bed, I guess you could call it. And so when it pocketed through into those places, that's where it had enough leverage on the part to pull it up off there. And so what I ended up doing was using less glue, covering more of the surface area, and then putting the casting of our double station orange just directly on top of the plate once I put the glue down on the accelerator, and left it for 30 seconds to a couple minutes, and then everything seemed fine. It was super rigid again, and everything came out perfect.
Okay, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, and really, I've tried a ton of ways to make these parts, and that's the only thing so far that's worked, because they start at eighth inch thick and they finish at about 115, and they're, I want to say, 14 or 15 inches by 6 inches,
Oh, wow.
and they get fully pocketed out. I mean, it's probably, I don't know, 80% material removal.
So that's a really big and thin part.
Yeah, big, thin, and just so much material removal that it wants to bow like crazy. Because like all we make a few other parts for him, and all the other ones that are of a similar style, we just kind of move clamps around. Like we cut a few pockets, move clamps into those pockets, cut the rest of the part, cut it out, and it's done. And it always works on those, but those are, I think, 3/16 material. And so, kind of as a last ditch effort on these parts, the first time I got them, I was like, well, I've never tried the tape and glue method. What do I have to lose at this point? I had already lost 3 or 4 of them to just terrible bowing. I mean, I'd cut maybe a quarter of the pockets out with the clamps on the outside and look inside the machine, and the part would be bowing like 50, 60 thou.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it got nasty. And then with the glue and all that, I face them with an end mill and pocket them all out and do a corner rounder, and everything blends perfectly and matches up perfectly, and it's fantastic. So I think
That's awesome.
the only place we could go from here would be a vacuum fixture, which is what we're considering right now. I need to kind of do some math and make sure that I have enough surface area left over after the entire op to actually hold the part. But that would make it a lot easier. Like the one thing about doing like a semi-production run, I mean, we're not doing a lot of grills, but even like last night I made 8 pieces, and it's just
Okay.
so much taping and removing tape and gluing and waiting for cure time. Like it's a real pain in the ass. Like it works fantastic, and like I said, I currently don't have any other way to make these parts better, but a vacuum fixture, especially with like the pallets that Pearson has on his, that I could swap
Yeah.
out for the different kinds of parts we make for him, it would be fantastic. If as long as it holds them like I think it will.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you just brought up, or you hinted at something that I wanted to ask you, or it sparked a question. So, since, for example, with you, you were in your shop super late last night, right?
Mm-hmm.
You ever get that feeling where you're like, you just keep messing up, like repeatedly, like you keep trying new things and it's just not working. And I know with me, there hits that point where it's like you have to kind of walk away and do something else while your mind just kind of thinks. Um, what do you do in that situation when, like in your case, you had a bunch of hot jobs? You don't really have that chance to like. It's not like you're going to tear down a setup to go think about something else and run a simple part. I mean, everything's ready to go. I've had that situation too, but what do you do in that scenario?
So there's a couple strategies I have. Like the first one, if I just feel like I'm getting too frustrated, is I'll just take a break. 5-10 minute break. I'll go find a good YouTube video. I'll shut the compressor off, or wait until it's quiet, and then just not use any more air, and
Yeah.
just sit there in the quiet, watch a YouTube video, drink a water or something, and just relax and like not think about it. Just kind of let myself get some distance from the problem, and that usually helps a little bit. If it's something that I'm scratching my head about, and like it feels like there's something wrong about it, after I take that break, I will just tear everything down and start from scratch. Like it might
Yeah.
take me an extra 20 minutes to set it back up, but like that's when I go through and like stone every surface again and make sure that everything's flat against it and everything's seating right and all my tools are clamped and to correct torques, and all my vices are square. Like that's it rarely catches me out, but every now and again, like move our vices around between machines and different orientations to fit like the orange palettes on and things like that. And occasionally, not that I won't indicate it, but maybe I'll indicate it and clamp it, and then hit it too hard with a hammer, hit a part too hard down with a hammer, and it'll be slightly out. And it's just
Yeah.
enough to throw my parts out or something like that. So just kind of going back and starting from the basics, ground up, and making sure every little thing is exactly how it's supposed to be. And once I can tick all those boxes, then I know, at least then I can eliminate all those things. Like at that point, it's like, well, okay, now I got to go through my code again, make sure my code's doing exactly what I want. Kind of think about the stresses in the part. Is that causing any kind of weirdness that I'm seeing? But it helps when you have a solid, ground floor to base everything off. If you're
Yeah.
like, I'm 100% sure everything up until I loaded the program and hit the go button it is good. You know where to start looking at least. So
Yeah, if you can eliminate those kind of straightforward variables, even though you thought you already did it, just do it again just to, reassure yourself.
yeah, well, and that's like one thing that I absolutely love about machining is it just trains you to be the best problem solver out there.
Yeah, that's very true.
Like I talk to people all the time, even doing like little IT work at my day job or helping family members or friends with cars or computers or anything like that. It seems like there's not everybody, but there is a lot of people that just don't know how to break down a problem into the manageable things that you can check and fix and make sure are good, and then narrow down where your problem is. And like machining teaches you that immediately, and it's such a fantastic skill to have just in life.
I could not have said that any better. That was awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, seriously though, like you said, just being able to break something, that in the moment it looks like a huge problem, but being able to break it down into manageable chunks and then narrowing those down and do okay, what actually matters, and then hopefully being able to solve it. That's definitely something machining teaches you.
Yeah, and I love that about it. Like I've always
Yeah.
loved problem solving, and then becoming a better problem solver because I'm a machinist. Just icing on the cake.
Yeah, and it comes down to just like we've talked about before, every part's a new challenge and you start learning all these tidbits and you remember them and when it comes up again it's like I wonder if that same issue is happening and most of the time it is and you can, that past knowledge kicks in and you can just, breeze through some things.
Yeah, I mean, problem solving when you break it down, like very rarely is problem solving a spark of genius. It is iterations of past mistakes and things you've seen or things you've heard or things you've read that maybe aren't exactly the situation you're in, but they're close enough that you're like, oh, this reminds me of this. Let me check what that final answer was.
Yeah.
It's going down this checklist of like all of your past life experiences, and you're like, well, this is sort of similar to this, and this is how I solve this. Let me try that. Let me do a variation on that. So yeah, I love that about it.
Yeah.
So what about you? What do you do when you kind of hit the wall and or bang your head against the plexiglass?
Basically, like for me, in some cases, it could be harder because I'm in quite literally a confined space, like a garage. And you only have, I mean, really, it's half a bay because the other half of the bay is the machine. Um, and so the issues that I come into is you get just so stuck in the environment that you're in. I get trapped in this environment and I need to get out of it. So quite literally, I'll just step outside or, I like your idea of watching YouTube videos or go eat something, do something to take your mind off of it and just try your best to come back to the problem with a fresh, clear head. And, maybe let's say you were trying to solve an issue in a very specific way and you got frustrated. Maybe come back and say, okay, I'll try that again later, but let's just try something completely out of the blue, like just to try it, just do something out of the box, try to figure it out. Um, I mean, if you can, sleep on it, that's not always an option as we've kind of mentioned, but depending on the issue, you kind of just have to. I do definitely do what you do, and just if a setup's not going right or something's not going right, just literally go back, double check all your steps, tools, fixturing, all that stuff, program, all that stuff. Yeah, you really nailed it on the head as far as what I do as well. So
Yeah. And like you said, sometimes sleep is the best option. Like even if it's a hot job, there are some times where I know that if I push any further, I'm going to scrap out my last extra part, or I'm going to scrap out my first real part, and that's going to set me more. It's going to make my parts later to the customer than if I just took the night and came back in the morning.
yep.
So sometimes I've just abandoned it and just said, you know what, it's too late. I'm too tired. I'm too hungry. I'm too whatever. I just need to sleep on it. And like I hate doing that, but I always feel better the next morning. It's like, okay, this is a problem I can solve. Let's get back at it.
Yeah. And yeah, sometimes you just got to call it a day. Like you said, even though it sucks, you just got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like last night I was struggling for sure. Like I had
Yeah.
planned on being home by not midnight, by like 10 ish.
Okay.
And I saw that I wasn't going to get the parts that I needed done because they needed to ship either last night or this morning, and they shipped out this morning.
Okay.
And I was like, you know what? If I push real hard and I stay here late, as long as I take my time and I don't do anything stupid, I don't have to come in today, and I can get the sleep that I'm missing tonight. Or I mean, I know you can never really catch up on sleep, but at least I'll feel better Wednesday morning.
Yeah. And I
So.
mean, sometimes that's the issue as far as, a psychological thing goes. Let's say for you, you were like, I want to be home by 10. And then 10 comes around and you're like, well, I want to be home, but I got to stay here. And you're in the back of your head, you start doing these mental numbers. You're like, well, I got 10 parts. They're 20-minute cycle times. I'm going to be here for 3 more hours. And, is it just me or is that?
No. In fact,
Okay.
I would love to hear from our listeners. Who else sits there and just does the math part after part? And it's like, okay, if I go to 110 on the feed, that means I'm going to get home, 30 seconds per part earlier,
Yep.
times 50 parts. It's like, man, I'll get home 25 minutes early. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And
then you start scrapping them and then you realize, okay.
Yeah. It's always a game of diminishing returns. It's like, how much can I push this before I start making real stupid mistakes? And like, there's definitely that balance. If like last night, the parts I was running in the kitty, as opposed to the grills took about 20 something minutes. And so I had to run another set of parts, just 5 of them for another customer because they needed to get to powder coating today. And, like one part of the op, I was using that AB Tools top hat tool to remove it in the second op.
Okay.
And like I programmed it very conservatively just because that's my like generic speeds and feeds, and usually I modify from there. And I saw it was taking a couple minutes. I was like, man, I could really crank that thing or repost it at a double the step over. And I was like, you know what? I got 5 parts. It's
Not worth it.
Yeah, I'll save myself 5 or 6 minutes and I didn't have any extra parts because I had just enough stock on the shelf to make these parts, or to finish, to make and finish these parts. And like, I was like, you know what? It's not worth it. Just chill, sit in the chair, let the parts run, do some deburring on the other parts, and just, call it a night when it gets done.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, like you said, okay, cool, I'll save 5-6 minutes. Sometimes it'll take that long to repost and just get it back and running. So it's really not worth it.
Oh yeah. You're telling me all of my machines are RS-232. So like even sending a 300 or 400K program to the kitty takes 8 minutes, 6 minutes.
Oh, wow. You don't drip feed it?
No. If I can fit it in the control, I try to fit everything in the control, because drip feed,
Okay.
I mean, it's relatively reliable, but I've
Does
seen
it lag?
older machines miss shit, or like,
Oh, geez.
corruption errors and things like that, and just have them like stop in the middle. And then you're like, well, shit, where was I? I need to go back and figure this out.
Yeah.
It causes more, for anything I can fit in the control, it causes more problems than I want to deal with.
I did not know both your machines were not USB. I guess
Yeah.
one of them I knew, but
So the Brother is now USB because of the CalMotion box that we bought. So you plug in the USB and then you run the CalMotion box through an internal RS-232 channel to the Brother control.
okay.
And then the Kitamuras, we just run a parallel port cable, DB25 from our desktop to the machine.
Man, that makes I just feel more spoiled in every way now that I think about it. You have to drive to get water for your coolant, and I have, a garden hose, and then I just, I don't even care about I don't even put stuff in my memory. I just run it off a USB.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, so it's just plug and play. I've had zero issues.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're limited on program size too. Like the Kitamura has 512K of
Okay.
memory, and then the brother has, I think, 512, but you can only run a program that is like 99K in size or less.
Okay.
You can DNC any size program off the USB, but if it resides in the control, like I've loaded 200K programs and then it throws an error when you try to display them. It's just
Huh.
it's a not a bug, but it's just a wonderful feature of the first generation Brother control.
Wonderful feature.
Trying to
That's
find that
some
silver lining.
feature.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So, but I love the CalMotion box on it. Being able to plug a USB in is fantastic. And if we need to DNC a longer program, then it works fine.
That's good.
Yeah.
I guess I had one issue at my old quote day job is they had an old Mori and like an MV40, really cool little machine, and it had a memory size, and I was doing some prototyping work because that's what I was there for, doing one-offs, programming and running the parts while they're doing production, and I just had to rough out this like it was like an 8-inch disc, and I had to I don't know, just basically take out, it was super thin wall, just take out like all the material, make like a bowl out of it. And in Mastercam, I just did, their HSM option, and I had to like cut that thing down to like 10 different programs. And it was basically like step down 100 thou, rough it out. Okay, run inside, get the new file for the second step down, back and forth 10 times just to rough this out because, of memory size constraints.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just because those older machines weren't meant for that stuff.
Yeah. The first shop I worked in, a few of those Kitamuras had 32K of memory,
Okay.
which is like nothing.
Yeah.
And so I became very good at tweaking, smoothing, and really pushing the step over as much as I could to get not cycle times, but program size down, because it's one of those things that like it becomes such a pain point because you're like, man, the machining is tough enough in the prototype world. Like I don't
Yeah.
need the machine fighting me to make a prototype.
Yeah, exactly. And I learned that you have to get really good with just basic tool paths like contour and facing, just how do you leverage those because they don't use up as much memory,
Yeah, exactly.
which fun challenges, but honestly, I rather deal with other challenges.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's really nice to not have to like tweak every single tool path to minimize the code it generates. Like the machines, a few of the machines we have at work have a ton of memory, and so it's not even an issue.
Yeah.
We've got a Doosan, which it's still a Fanic, and so it's got like no, I think it's got 512K normally, which is just insane in 2019. But we also got it with the data server option, so it's got like a 20K or not 20K, 20 gigabyte card inside of it that you can run directly off of.
Okay.
So that's nice that they offer that at least. But I still just that is one thing that bothers me to no end about Fanic.
Is there memory?
Yeah, yeah. It's like, come on, guys. It's almost 2020. Let's get with the memory. Everybody else has a lot more than that.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that bugs me with like HAAS. It's like, okay, I know that this has like whatever their high 64 gigabyte memory option. I know that all machines have that, but you have to pay to unlock it. Um, it's just kind of annoying because it's so cheap nowadays. Just getting like memory, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
But
mean, I guess the big thing is I keep having to tell myself it's like, well, there's a big difference between consumer electronics and industrial electronics. Like
that's very
they
true.
have to be significantly more rigorously tested and uh, bulletproof compared to a laptop. If a laptop fails, people kind of expect that, like, oh, they'll be pissed, but like it's not going to scrap out a $20,000 casting or some crazy something like that.
Yeah, I was about to say like a turbine or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
That's a good point.
so what about you? How's job shop life? How's the Lego business? I saw a few of your live Instagrams this week about your modular series that you want to redo, and it seems like there's a lot of pieces moving. Not no
Yeah,
pun intended.
so yeah, exactly. Job shop life, it's been weird. Like this past, I would say last like Thursday, Friday, and then today especially, it's been like a lot of like that RFQ and like quote this, quote that, like call this guy called me, like all that. And so now it's kind of like the calm before the storm. I hope these guys bite type thing. Um, because I was sitting here just quoting this one job, and my phone was sitting there and it started buzzing. And I looked down and it was one of my really good customers that's local. And I'm like, huh, he's either calling me for more work or the parts I delivered were bad. So let's hope it's the second one or the whatever. And he called me and I was like, so how'd the parts turn out? He's like, oh, they work flawless, no issues. I'm like, okay, perfect. And he's like, you know, it was actually those castings that I remember showing you a while back that needed to be just drilled and tapped and then cleaned up. I don't know
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
remember
yeah.
those. Yeah, so long story short, they've got their one machine tied up running other stuff, and they've got a couple hundred castings, and they're like, hey, do you want to just maybe run these for us? You already quoted it. I'm like, yeah, if you want, I can stop by later this week and we can talk. So hopefully, run a couple hundred of those. That'll be pretty cool.
Nice. Those didn't seem all too difficult either.
No, just I think it's going to be like one, two, three ops, something like that, or two ops. I think it's three, because there's two different part numbers. But yeah, pretty much just clean up one surface, drill and tap, and counterbore some stuff. So I'm gonna have to look into. I'll have to check the threads, but I know I need a 1032 form tap for whatever hardened steel or cast material this is. So it'll be interesting.
You might even just want to look into a thread mill then,
Yeah, that's true.
since they're casting. I don't know if they're going to give you any extra. You'll have to find out when you go, but it's certainly a lot safer to use a thread mill.
Yeah, because it is a decent. I think it might be a quarter 20,
Yeah,
something decently large compared to what I'm used to, at least.
yeah. I mean, so the thread mill might be a little more expensive than a tap, but if it breaks, it doesn't scrap apart, or at least it's a lot less likely to.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm kind of intimidated by thread milling because I've never done it personally.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, I've never had something I needed it for. I really want to like get comfortable with it. It's kind of the going back to before I went into like official machining school, I kind of like mentally was like, what do I want to learn in these 2 years of going to school? And the main thing was like threading, because like everything about it, there's so many different, aspects of it. I wanted to specifically learn how to thread on a manual lathe, and I did that. I mean, really cool process.
That's a
Probably
ton of
won't,
fun.
yeah, probably won't use it, in a while. One, because I don't have a lathe, um,
Yeah, that makes it
but
a little hard.
yeah, so but just everything from tapping, tap drill sizes, all that stuff. I wanted to learn as much as I could. And now, you would have asked me maybe 6 months ago, hey, you want to tap these 256 holes? I'd be like, and then now I'm just like, oh yeah, just form tap that, like no big deal.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I remember you texting me and being like, "I'm a little nervous about this," and I
yeah,
was like, "Don't even worry. Like, don't sweat it. You've got a drill tap or drill mill machine. form tap it, just go for it. It's
Yeah.
aluminum. You get, no problem as long as everything else is right. Your coolant concentration and your part's not going to pull out of your fixture because you're clamping it so light. Like there's anymore, I rarely worry about a tap.
Yeah.
And if I do, it's because it's really big or really really tiny.
Yeah.
Um,
So I've
yeah,
gotten a lot more comfortable with that. And it's just to the point where it's like, I just go back to my old programs, copy and paste speeds and feeds. If it's a new tap, I run it slow unless it's something crazy amount of holes that I need to knock out. But I'd rather be conservative. Kind of goes back to what we talked about and just get it done, not worry about it.
yeah. Oh, well, I mean, the one thing you got to worry about with form taps though is running them fast enough that you actually form the thread.
Interesting. Okay.
So like you need to run them I, it depends on the manufacturer and the size hole and blah 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 blah. But you need to run them fast enough so that you're actually forming that miner, because it'll lead to a oversized miner diameter otherwise, or it can.
So if you ran it too slow RPM wise, aka feed, um, it just won't form that.
Yeah, it won't push out enough material.
Interesting. Never
Yeah.
heard that before.
At least that's what I've always been told, and
Okay.
I've seen it. The difference, running a form tap at 500 versus 1500 RPM, it'll close up a little bit more for sure.
Interesting. Huh.
So that's definitely something to keep in mind. And you've got good rigid tapping, and you should be fine. Like the
Yeah.
the 5 parts that I ran yesterday, I didn't want to scrap any of them, but I ran the M6 tap at 1500 without even thinking about it. That's just
Yeah.
like my go-to. Um, so I think you'd be more than fine.
Yeah. We'll have to see. I'll have to double check the print, but this is being cast and then it's some kind of I don't know if it's in the soft state or the hard state, but it's some kind of steel or something. So I need to just make sure I find the right tools.
Yeah, I mean you can get a multi-pitch thread mill too, and so rather
Okay.
than sweeping up the entire helix, you sweep up like one full revolution or one or two full revolutions, and you're done.
Okay.
So
Yeah. I
it's
think I've
not that.
saw those in what I think Edge Precision is that his YouTube channel.
Yeah,
He did a good video on Fusion versus Esprit. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't make it through the whole thing. I got started it pretty late, and so I had to turn it off. But I've been meaning to go back and kind of finish that video out.
Yeah, it towards the end he shows the actual tool pass, and what you're describing is what he shows. So
Yeah, it works really well. I'm more than happy to jump in like usual and help you out with that because it's thread milling's very easy. Like it once you know what the 4 or 5 different boxes that you kind of need to modify depending on how the part's modeled, it's easy. It's as easy as
okay,
picking a drill tool path for your tap.
okay, that's
Yeah.
good to know that it's not. I shouldn't be as intimidated.
No, I wouldn't be intimidated at all. Like the biggest thing with thread milling I found is, at least in harder materials and aluminum, it really doesn't matter. Like you just need to go to size and maybe do a float pass if you're really worried about it or something. But in steels, if you think about a 60-degree profile, like every thou that you move over is not equal to like a thou more cut. Like as you work your way up that thread profile, each thousandths that you move into the cut is like a significant jump in cutter engagement.
Okay,
So if you go to like scientific cutting tools or anybody that makes cutting tools, really, they'll tell you kind of the percentages to step over. Like it'll be, a 70-30 or a 20-20-60 or something like that. And so they'll tell you exactly how much they want you to step over each cut and in what material.
so there's some sort of ratio and formula to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. I mean,
that
and you
makes
can do the
sense.
math too if you want, but a lot of them just give you what they want as far as step overs.
Okay, yeah, that's the thing with um, there was some part I was looking at, and I was talking to another buddy, and he was like, thread milling's the only downside is normally thread mills are just more pricey as far as tools go.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. Yeah. Well, I mean, because you're
and
not going to buy a high speed thread mill or a cobalt thread mill. I mean, I guess you could, but they're almost all going to be carbide, whereas taps, you know, powdered metal or cobalt or anything like that is pretty common, and the carbide form taps are much more rare.
I didn't even never heard of a carbide form tap before.
Pretty sure I've used one in the past. They're not, like I said, they're not all that common, but I
Yeah.
think I want to say Harvey has carbide through spindle coolant ones.
Okay, I definitely seen that in a catalog.
Yeah, I can't remember who I saw, but somebody months ago on Instagram was showing a through spindle form tap. They're cool. Like it looks
Yeah.
crazy, but for the most part, I don't think it's very common at all.
Why would you need a through spindle coolant form tap?
I think cooling and like form tapping technically form tapping doesn't really make no, sorry. People say form tapping doesn't make chips. Technically
Yeah.
it does make tiny chips.
Okay.
It doesn't make like full chips, and chips aren't going to pack or anything like that, but like it does make micro chips because there are, the reliefs for the yeah, I guess they're just reliefs cut in it and things like that. Like there's always going to be some little bit of material in there. Um, and so the through spindle kind of blows that out. It cools the tool. Uh, I think it helps a lot in like super alloys
Okay, that makes sense.
because like form tapping creates a ton of heat and pressure.
Well, yeah, it's just friction basically.
Right, right, exactly. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, so hopefully that goes over well. And then I'm waiting for the past order of these aerospace parts I've done. They're basically the 30 of each I made for them. I didn't realize it was like a prototype kind of stage for testing.
hmm
And so now they're taking all these design revisions for like this assembly is what it is. And they're doing all these design revisions and they're coming back to me. This was like Friday I got the email, so probably either tomorrow or Thursday or something. So sometime this week they're basically going to send me back all the revisions and I got to go through and quote them again. Probably be very similar parts, maybe just a couple changes, but the impression I got from them when he stopped by the other day was like there's going to be a lot of parts to make, and like it was hard to gauge is that okay, 30 seemed a lot to you guys, but are we talking like 50, 100, 200? So I don't know how many, but I feel like it's going to be more than that 30, so that'll be hopefully good.
did you have a pretty solid process for the first time, the first go around? I mean, obviously it was production, so or not production, prototyping. So I'm sure there's improvements you can make. But were you pretty happy with how you're making them?
Yeah, there was a couple times where it's like, some of these parts were like four, sometimes 6-aught parts because you have to flip them on each side. And I just remember vividly there was points where it's like, okay, I only have 30 of them. Do I run one at a time? Do I run two at a time? How do I want to do this? And I definitely need to hook up the other, like the jaw on my orange vise for the double station and get another set of Talon grips or something so I can run, maybe 4 op 1s at a time. Because then I have the other smaller vise that I'll just keep the smooth jaws in for, finishing ops.
Yeah,
Um, Definitely need to start doing that for some of these runs because Fusion makes it so easy to do that multiple work coordinates. I was playing with that last time I ran these parts, and that's really cool.
yeah, component pattern, and then tell each instance to be its own
Yeah,
work offset.
exactly. So that was really fun to play with that. Got really comfortable with doing that. So yeah, I definitely need to start using that double station feature on my Vice because I've basically been using it as a single station this whole time.
Right, right, right. I mean, and for a lot of your work, it seems like that makes more sense. But
Yeah.
I mean, especially like for me, our double station is an additional vice that I have to set up on the other bed of the kitty. But like if it was already set up all the time, I think I would use both stations of it significantly more.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, but yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to hearing how that all works out because that sounds like some good work.
Yeah.
especially if you were happy with the parts.
Yeah. No, there was never really, I remember just running them. There's never a part where it's like, darn, that really got me stuck. It was all just straightforward geometry type stuff, basic shapes and whatever. And it seemed to go by pretty easily. And especially now that I have like programs, I could probably just copy and paste a lot of these operations.
Awesome. That's
So,
great. I'm glad to hear it.
yeah, that'll be awesome.
And then what about the Lego side of the business? Things going well? It sounds like you have a lot of new molds that you want to make.
Yeah, so I'm working hard with my designer, getting some new products designed. Now I'm kind of building up a queue of molds to make. So that's kind of what my machine's been up to, is just cranking these out, trying to play catch up. But I've kind of learned that I'm always going to be a couple products behind, which is fine. Um, and then big thing that I've been working on like today and yesterday was ordering parts for restocking existing products that are just sold out. Um, there's probably a list of like 50 products that are out of stock. I narrowed it down to 30 that I really wanted to stock. And so now it's, sitting down and spending a lot of money buying parts to make them, which isn't fun, but you gotta, if you don't have inventory, you can't make money. So,
Right. Yeah. You definitely don't want to be just in time with something that's kind of like a spur of the moment purchase. I would
exactly.
imagine that a lot of people, it's like, oh, I got a few bucks to blow. Like, let me get some Legos.
Yeah. Or especially if they come to the website for something specific, either A, it's not in stock, so they just leave, or they buy one thing, they're already there, and they're like, I want to save money on shipping and buy some other things, but there's nothing else in stock, so that turns them away too.
Right. Do you have that kind of metrics through your shop? Because it's Shopify, right? That runs
Yeah,
your website?
I have. There's actually more that I need to pay attention to. There's a lot of analytics that they give you, but most of what I just said was just what I would do and what I know other people do. You're not gonna spend $5, $10 if shipping's $5, in my opinion. Sure, there's people that still do it. I don't know why personally, but try to make up for that shipping cost. So yeah, I need to look into that more. But they give me a couple things. Like I can see if someone's put stuff in their cart and then they've left the website. Like I can see what they put in their cart. Um, which is kind of interesting to be like, oh, these are all potential orders that I could get. Why did I not get it?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely, I get emails from quite a few different businesses. It's like, you put these things in your cart. Why don't you come complete your purchase? It's like,
Exactly. And I
because I
can,
thought about it for a second.
yeah. And I can, I actually have it set up where if you do that on my site, I think it's like within 2 hours, if you leave, it'll automatically send you that email to you and be like, hey, Dylan, where'd you go? Type thing. You want to come complete your purchase. And it'll also show me if that email's gone out and if that person's clicked on that email and completed the purchase through that. Um,
Yeah.
so it's always interesting. It's a very low number, but I'm curious if I could somehow bump that up somehow. Maybe, come back and be like, hey, I know you left, but we'll give you free shipping if you come back type thing. Or,
I'm sure it's possible because I've gotten emails like that before.
yeah.
Or like they can't remember. I think it's a car part website, but like if you sit on there, or maybe it's Tiger Direct, or I don't know, one of those, like the little chat comes up that's like, is there any way we can help you? And then if you leave it alone for a while and you just sit on the website for like 45 minutes, it'll be like, hey, as a special right now, you can get 5% off with this code. You're like, oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. There's actually, I think Online Metals does that a lot too.
Oh, maybe
Um,
that's the one I'm thinking of.
there's a lot of places that do that now. It's great marketing.
Yeah. Well, and like you were saying, just to save on shipping, like I just bought, we make these parts for one of my customer that he buys, I don't know, 6 or 10 pairs every couple months, and we just make a whole bunch of them and keep them on the shelves. And I bought like double the amount of material that I needed because it was a 20% off sale already, but I could only get the 20% off sale if I bought 2 sticks worth. And so like I did the math, and like with the saved shipping and the 20% off, I was saving, I don't know, $80 or $90. So I was like, oh, it's worth it. I know he'll buy it, and if he doesn't, like I'm not going to cut it all up and make all the parts all at once, like double what is the foreseeable future. But at least I'll have it on the shelves, and like it's 70-75, so there's always going to be something else to use it for if not.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
All right, should we call it there?
Yeah, we can. You said you had a question from your buddy though too, right?
Oh yeah, let's do that real quick. So EDC Machining asked a interesting question. He asked, so in Fusion, when we use adaptive tool paths, do we use, let me actually pull it up, but I know the gist of it was, do we use the both ways adaptive feature? Because I know that was, I mean, it's not new anymore, but at one point that was a new feature on Fusion. And I know at first I didn't personally use it. So he goes, do you ever use the adaptive both ways? I know a few guys are scared to, and some that's all they do. And I switched to both ways adaptive to get or to save time. And what I normally do is I'll do both ways, but I'll cut the like whatever the backwards way, the both way part of it. I'll cut that feed rate down a decent bit.
Right.
Just for whatever reason, I don't know. But I definitely take advantage of both ways adaptive.
I don't really use it at all.
Really?
None of my parts, from everything I've read and all the videos I've looked at and stuff, you don't really see any cycle benefits until like it's a large piece.
Yeah.
Like where you're really hurting yourself as far as rapids go. And like I don't make anything big enough for it to really matter. Both of my machines are like stupid quick as far as rapids go, and so to pull back and reposition a couple inches is probably faster than cutting backwards. And I can take a bigger cut faster every time I go climb. So I don't know. I have heard both positives and negatives about it. I have heard some people say that they drop their cycle time. I've heard some people say that they increase their cycle time.
Yeah.
I personally just don't have enough time right now to really play around with it.
Yeah, that's fair.
If I get back into making some more parts for the shop or some of my own products, I'll kind of play around with it with my stuff. But for the most part, I just I go with what I know works, what I know I can leave alone and not really babysit and have to kind of figure out if I like it or not. I wish I had more time to kind of experiment. And that's really why I liked the Autodesk Cam Challenge and things like that so much, is like those are BS parts. So I can play around with 3D toolpaths or roughing strategies or anything like that I normally wouldn't use on customer work.
Yeah.
So maybe next time I've got an opportunity like that where it's something for myself or something for a contest or whatever it is, that's when I'll start playing around with it some more. But I just don't have the time to play around with it right now.
Fair point. So what we've learned is Dylan's a dirty machinist, and then he also doesn't like both ways adaptive.
I am conservative when it comes to my toolpaths. Yes.
Now he's trying to defend himself over here. Because he knows I'm about to close the podcast.
Yeah.
All right.
Off in the middle. I see how it is.
Yep. All right, guys. That will do it for this episode. Once again, make sure you post about us. We're slowly but surely gaining a good following on Instagram. And like I said, we're able to see how many people view each podcast, and the numbers are stacking up and it's looking awesome. And we're working on getting some special guests on. So definitely feel free to send us any questions through Instagram, and we'll try to answer them in next episode. But other than that, anything else you want to say, Dylan?
Yeah, no, just thanks for coming along for the ride. Like it's really cool seeing all, more and more people start to contact us and follow along, and the more people we can get involved and get either on the podcast or sending us questions, the more fun it is. Like I've learned a lot both about you and about parts of machining that I never really thought about just from the questions people have sent us, and so I appreciate that, and it's a real eye opener sometimes.
Yeah, Totally agree. Yeah, just got to share the knowledge as much as we can. All right, guys, that'll be episode 7. We'll see you next week with episode 8.